The demonic world knows that there is a great day of judgment coming where they are going to be gathered and sentenced to final destruction and eternal torment. And they simply are doing as much damage as they can in God's kingdom before that time comes.
Hi, I'm your host, Dan Kruver. What do demons know that we often forget? In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper turns to Luke 8, verses 26 to 39 to show why the demonic realm fears Christ and why their terror should strengthen our trust. This teaching was originally delivered at Bethlehem Baptist Church on March 14, 1982.
Let's get the setting clear in our minds first. This area is on the southeast part of the Sea of Galilee, and it's a Gentile area. How do you know that from the passage, that these are Gentiles? They're raising pigs. The pig was an unclean animal for the Jews, and it's known that the area of the Decapolis to that side had a lot of Gentiles in it. Let's not worry too much about the setting. Let's get into what actually happened. Verse 27 says that the man had demons. If you ask, now, how did demons relate to this man? Well, the word had is one way to describe it. Verse 30 says, many demons had entered him. So had probably means they were inside him in some sense. And also in verse 33, demons came out of him. So to get the picture, evidently this man was indwelt by and fully under the control of these demons. And these demons evidently liked very much to demonstrate their power by enabling him to do these remarkable things, break chains and so on, and to torment him in the tombs. And I think it's not an accident that he's found out there running around in the graveyard, because death is something that demons intend for human beings, and probably it's a miserable place for somebody who knows that's his destiny, to have to spend all of his life. So demons are specializing in making life miserable and deathly for those over whom they have influence. Now let's step back for a moment and try to get a larger conception of the way Jesus understood demons and his conflict with them. In Luke 11:15 to 18, we learn some things about demons. We learn that there is a prince of demons called Beelzebul or Satan. Both of those terms are used interchangeably in Luke 11:15 to 18. So there's a whole horde of these supernatural spirit beings called demons or unclean spirits. They have a head who is Satan. Moreover, we learn that from Jude 6, 2 Peter 2:4, very probably the origin of these beings is that they had once been angelic beings and had fallen and became inveterately corrupt. Evidently, there's no thought of demons being redeemed or saved or being preached to. They are beyond help, evidently, and inveterately corrupt and bent on man's destruction. Now, in Luke 11:20, that same passage, Jesus says, if I, by the finger of God or by the Spirit of God, cast out demons, the kingdom of God has come upon you. What he's saying there is that the kingdom of God, the saving rule or dominion of God, has entered into conflict now, has invaded, as it were, Satan's territory, and is liberating people from the control of these unclean spirits. Jesus in Luke 9:1 hands over to His disciples that authority, sends them out to cast out demons and to heal. And the picture I think we have is that with Jesus, this devil-ridden world has been invaded, and His power is now spreading through the world, and where He conquers men's lives, Satan is driven out, and people come into the fold of Christ's lordship and kingdom, and they are safe and protected. And I think stories like this were preserved in the early church precisely to assure the church that though they could see many demonic manifestations around them, they need not fear. We'll see how that's brought out further on in the story. A great hymn. If you want to learn a poem that will encourage your heart, learn the last two verses of A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Though this world with devils filled should threaten to undo us, it's just a great, great hymn about demonic action and the rule and the victory of God over demons. Now, how did Jesus deal with them? That's what we want to find out, because He's our Lord. He dwells within, and if He has the kind of power that seems to have here, then we don't need to be too uptight about a very great resurgence of demon activity and Satan worship in our own day, especially in Minnesota. What does He do? Verses 28 and 31, let's read them. When He saw Jesus, He cried out and fell down before Him and said with a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beseech you, do not torment me." Now, I want to ask what the demon is really asking Jesus not to do there, and I want to tie verse 31 in. He says, "They begged Him not to command them to depart into the abyss." So two things the demon begged Jesus not to do. Don't torment me, and don't send me into the abyss. Now, what were they really asking for? Let me take you outside this passage to track down these two words, torment and abyss, and see how they relate to demons elsewhere in the New Testament, just briefly. One place would be Revelation 20, verse 10, where it says this. The picture is of the millennium coming to a close, and it says, "The devil, who had deceived the nations, was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented," same word is right here, "day and night forever." But another text that comes from the words of Jesus is Matthew 25:41, where it says, this is in the midst of that parable about those who have fed the hungry and clothed the naked and so on. It says in verse 41 of Matthew 25, "Then He will say to those at His left hand," those who did not obey Him, "Depart from me, you cursed, into eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." There is an awful, tormenting lake of fire prepared, destined for Satan and his angels. It's an awful thought that there will be humans there as well, but that's what Jesus said, those on His left hand. But my interest right now is simply to point out that these demons know that. They know what is appointed for them. And I think they were saying, Jesus, don't put us there yet. Let's drop down here to this verse, this word abyss. Revelation 20, verse 2 and 3. The angel from God seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years and threw him into the abyss. It's translated the bottomless pit, probably, in yours, but it's the same Greek word as here. Threw them into the abyss and shut it. The question that occurs to me now is why Jesus should grant the request of a demon. He did grant their request. They said, don't torment us in this way. Don't send us into the abyss. Then they ask leave to go, and he lets them go. The clue to the answer, why Jesus might do that, I think is found in the Matthew's parallel to this word right here. Matthew adds a little phrase or records an additional phrase for us. He says, he quotes the demon as saying, have you come here to torment us before the time? Now, what does that mean? Have you come here to torment us before the time? I think that means we know our time is coming. Don't torment us before the time. They're actually pleading God's decrees, aren't they? And Jesus, I think, knows that God has appointed their time, and He does not go against His Father's appointments, and therefore says, all right, just get out of this man. The time that they're referring to, I think is referred to in Jude 6, where it says that these fallen angels are kept in the nether gloom, awaiting the judgment of the great day. So the demonic world knows that there is a great day of judgment coming where they are going to be gathered and sentenced to final destruction and eternal torment. And they simply are doing as much damage as they can in God's kingdom before that time comes. A very awesome and horrible thing to think about, that beings with intelligences could be so deluded as not to want to change, but only to cause as much evil before their time is up. Why does God allow such vast and destructive demonic activity in the world anyway? I mean, the texts prove He's got power to dispense the demons anytime He wants out of a human being. Why then does He allow Satan in the beginning to tempt Eve and Adam, and then right on through history, Satan to do such destructive work? Well, I'll throw out a possible answer to you. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, you've got this thorn of the flesh. Paul says, in order to keep me from being too elated, I don't think that's a very good translation there. I think it means in order to keep me from being overly exalted or getting a little too uppity, a thorn of the flesh has been given to me, and it's translated messenger of Satan. What's another word for messenger if you translated it literally? Angel. It's the same phrase as found in Matthew 25:41. It's a demon. Or there's a demon behind it. So it seems to me. God is suffering Paul to be tormented by a demon. Probably some physical malady, like Job. Job would be a good example. Now, why? Well, Paul asked that question, God, get this thing out of my life. 3 times. 3 times he hears no, and then the explanation, which is what? What's the point of that all? What's God doing here? My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. And the word weakness there probably relates to this thorn in the flesh. Now, if you put all that together, is it wrong to say that God is tolerating demonic activity in the world so that His power is made perfect in people's weakness. Now, I don't know if that'll explain all of the activity of Satan, but it may go a long way. I think the same thing is true of Job. You come to the end of the book of Job, what has been God's purpose in allowing Satan to wreak havoc in Job's life? It's to teach Job some awful lessons. He comes to the end there and says, I used to hear about you, but now I have seen you and know you like I never knew you before because of what I've been through under Satan's rod. And he says there in the last chapter that God had done it all to him. A lot of mystery there, that God would, as it were, use Satan as His left-handed work, as it were, to accomplish gracious things in the lives of His people. Well, that's beyond this text here, and so I want to just move on to some other things that are more immediately here. Why did Jesus ask this demon his name in verse 30? What's your name? One possibility would be, in that day, to learn somebody's name would enable you to pronounce kind of an incantation over them, to gain some power over them. I don't see any indication of that here at all. Jesus doesn't make any use of this name whatsoever. Just hears it. I think the reason is to manifest to the listeners, to the man himself, and to us what the situation really is with this man. This man has not just a demon, but a legion of demons. A legion in that day was 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers. We've got 2,000 pigs according to Mark. Luke doesn't pick up on that. At any rate, thousands, let's say. You got thousands of demons. Now, one demon could throw a man on the ground and make him froth at the mouth. This man is possessed by a multitude of demons. And Jesus asked, what's your name, in order to make that clear so that when He acts in deliverance, it's clear what a great deliverance it is, I think. Now, why did these demons want to go into the pigs? Now, a large herd of swine was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged Him to let them enter these. Strange. Why do they want to go into pigs? Maybe they knew this. Jesus would not give another human up to them. They said, how about Peter? No hope. Jesus would not give His own up to the demons. Well, which is better if your goal in life is to demonstrate your destructive power and bring as much evil into the world? A tree so you can wither it, or a herd of pigs so you can kill them? It seems like animals are kind of the next stage in the hierarchy of being. They could have said, let's go into this tree so we can wither this tree. Demonstrate our evil capacity by withering up the tree. We don't pity trees when they wither. We pity pigs, sort of. Maybe that was the best they could do, is to get into some kind of being that would give them a dwelling. They don't like to go through waterless places and kind of float around in the world. They want a place where they can do damage. Well, He's not going to give them up to man, so where can they do damage? In the pigs. They're the closest thing at hand, and that raises the question for us why Jesus would allow them to go into the pigs, especially since it resulted in the loss of the pigs to those people and ultimately resulted in Him getting driven out of the country. Why do you suppose Jesus grants their request to go into these pigs, since it was in all likelihood known to Jesus that very likely the pigs would go berserk and go down the hill and drown themselves in the water? There is no way of knowing what Jesus might have done to compensate these people for their pigs if they hadn't run Him out. You know what I see here? I see a test. I'm going to tie it into the Pharisees. I see a test going on. He ruined their livelihood. That's a lot of money. 2,000 pigs would be a lot of money today. Now, He did it by freeing a human being. Here they come out from the city. They've lost their pigs and they've gained a brother. And what's their response? How do they pass the test or do they fail the test? The test is, what do you value? Do you value the liberty of a human being from the demonic, or do you value your hog farm? And there was no question. They feared losing more hogs. They didn't care much. They didn't seem to get excited at all that a human being had been liberated from the shackles of Satan. You see a relationship there of something that happened with the Pharisees in the synagogue. If your ox falls into the pit on Saturday, you're going to pull it out, the law notwithstanding. And is not this human being with the withered hand worth as much as your ox? I see a real close parallel there. This is kind of the Gentile counterpart to the Jewish legalism. They didn't have any law to be enslaved to. They were enslaved to materialism, just like non-Jews are today. And they fail the test utterly. They don't value salvation. They value their money and their pigs. Therefore, when they drive Jesus away, the loss of the pigs is experienced as judgment. I believe that had they welcomed Jesus into their city, they would have gained 100-fold pigs and mothers and fathers. Any sacrifice you make for the good of a person is going to be restored to you either in this life or the next. But they drove him out, and therefore they were judged. But is judgment the last word on these people? What's the last word to these people from Jesus? He doesn't give it himself. Who gives it? Right. And what does Jesus commission him to do? Go preach to the people. See if you can save them. You go tell what God has done. You win the people. They reject me. The last word was not judgment. The last word was missions to these people who had driven him out. And that's a beautiful picture of loving your enemy. So I sum up 4 points that I see in this story. Number 1, demons tremble in the presence of Jesus. That's good news to us, isn't it? That's good news, I'll tell you. You will probably, before your life is done, encounter some frightening demonic things. Now, I think Satan is at work against all of us. His slings and arrows are towards you in relatively pure secular forms. But there are in the dark corners of this city a lot of hideous things going on that will confront you and frighten you out of your skin. You remember at those times, devils tremble in the presence of Jesus Christ. I made up a little doublet here. When Jesus is near us, the demons will fear us. If that helps you, remember, you hold on to that. Second, the total ultimate doom of this whole demonic realm is assured. Don't torment us before the time. There is a time coming, and it's all going to be over for Satan and his hordes, and this world is going to be so beautifully free from any evil influence at all, the new heavens and the new earth. Third, care about people more than you care about your livelihood. Be willing to take some sacrifices if it means healing people spiritually or physically. Let people rise in your values rather than things. Fourth, bless those who persecute you. If you are driven out, write a letter. Do something good for those who hate you, because Jesus sent back this man. He could have taken away the only witness with him. He wanted to go. but he didn't. And those are 4 pieces of good news that I hope will carry us through this week and beyond in faith.
This is Light and Truth, God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Cruver. Thank you for listening. On our next episode, John Piper concludes our 3-part series, Faith Beyond Fear, with a message titled, The Miracle of Faith. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.